Hello everyone, thanks for joining. Welcome back to another episode. In this episode, we're going to be going over Square stock. They just recently announced that they're going to be putting 1% of their total assets into Bitcoin in a surprise $50 million investment. So a lot of investors have been really excited about this, and they're trying to decide what to make of it. If we go ahead and pull up Square stock here, Square has had a huge run-up in share price recently, and they just hit their new all-time high, with over 1,000% return in the last 5 years. Investors wonder, is the new Bitcoin investment going to be the next big thing for this company? Well, when you look at a company like Square, this goes hand in hand with their investment. So I'll be talking about this in this article, as well as basically just Bitcoin in general. I'll be looking at an interview with Warren Buffett from a while back and basically giving his opinion on Bitcoin, how it's not a productive asset and how he shouldn't be investing in it. But I'll also be giving the flip side. We also have an interview from CNBC with one of their investors, one of their analysts, talking about how Bitcoin is the future and how it's even going to be a stable currency. So I'll be giving both ends of the spectrum. But we'll also be talking about Bitcoin in general. We'll be looking at the price, looking at its future, and whether or not this will be affecting Square for the long run. Now, in the meantime, after we get done with Square stock, we're also going to be talking about another stock, one that has went down over 90% in value over the last 5 years. GameStop has been crushed, and I mean crushed. Pretty much all investors had flocked away from this company. And now one of the only two investors, one of the only two partnerships that you've seen from this company, they had a recent investment from Chewy of about 9% stake in the company. And then they also had their recent deal with Microsoft, which makes up today's 44% jump. So we'll be going over all of that in this video. We'll be looking at the recent deal that Microsoft made and how this can help GameStop with their recent $7.5 billion acquisition. They bought a ton of new exclusive franchises, how they can bring that to Xbox and then integrate that into GameStop's platform. Now, GameStop also had that 9% investment from Chewy co-founder. We'll be going over that and how that affects the business. We'll also be going over Luna Game Services. So this is another service that is going to be a direct competitor to GameStop. Amazon recently announced just about 2 weeks ago that they're coming out with Luna, a new game streaming service. Now, this is going to be a direct competitor that I think will negatively impact GameStop, so I'll be giving my opinions on that. We'll also be looking at Steam. Steam is going to be another direct competitor to this, and Steam, in my opinion, has very cult-like customers. You know how usually when you talk about people that invest in Tesla, they are like cult-like investors or people that invest in Berkshire Hathaway? These are the type of people that are almost irrational in a sense, in the way that they're going to be buying it no matter what. In the same way with Steam, they don't ask, what platform will I be buying my PC games from? They say, what does Steam have to offer for me to buy their PC games from? So I'll be talking about Steam and how that'll also be affecting GameStop. And then last but not least, this is going to be the finale of the episode. I think this is incredible. Okay, so you know how I showed you that share price 5 years ago with GameStop, how it was 90% negative return over the last 5 years? Well, this was the peak of the share price, about $47 a share. Now, what's really interesting about this, I found an interview of the CEO, and he was on Jim Cramer's Mad Money, and guess what? When was this interview filmed? In September of 2015, almost exactly 5 years ago from this date. This little peak was in November of 2015, so about 2 months before this. The CEO goes on here and tries to hype up their collectibles business after they just bought ThinkGeek, spent billions of dollars on the acquisition, and how that's going to be a positive spin for the company, and how I think it is really overhyped and really he is not focused at all on the future, and you can see how this turned out. But I'll be giving my opinions on that and how GameStop turned down over the last 5 years, but also be looking at Square, looking towards the future with their $50 million investment, buying about 4,709 Bitcoins. But overall, guys, if you're not familiar with me, if you're new to the channel, I'd invite you to subscribe. I am a dividend investor currently owning 27 different dividend stocks, and the reason that these two companies relate to me, both Square and GameStop, is because the partnership with GameStop is a company that I just recently owned, and I really like the deal that Microsoft just made, not only buying out that video games company, but also having this partnership with Square stock. So I think this is going to provide an excellent opportunity for Microsoft and GameStop alike. Now, the reason why I want to mention Square in this video is that I have a direct competitor to Square. One of my largest holdings in my portfolio. I am very bullish on Visa for the long term. Now, Visa makes up 6% of my portfolio, and I love this company. I think it provides excellent opportunity for the long run. But one of their biggest threats to this company, is not a company like MasterCard, a direct competitor. I think it's more of a disruptive technology like a Square. So overall, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'd invite you to do so. And one of the ways you can support me and my channel if you want to help me out is go ahead and use this referral link. There's tons of different things in the description. Go ahead and check that out, including the shared portfolio video in the description with all 27 holdings. This referral link to get signed up with M1 Finance. We have 44 people signed up. Let's go ahead and get that to 45. And then I'll also show the 27 holdings that I own at the end of this video. But let's go ahead and get straight into Square stock. Square puts 1% of its total assets in Bitcoin in a surprise $50 million investment. They bought 4,700 Bitcoins. 4,700. This is something that Square is wanting to look forward to the future. Now let's go ahead and look at Bitcoin share price here. Now I say share price, it's actually one Bitcoin price. Bitcoin currently trades at $10,927, and today alone is up about 2.5%, mostly due to that announcement from Square. Now, if we go back to 5 years ago, it is almost double that price. It was trading at almost $20,000 back in December of 2017. There was lots of hype around this company, and I think when we look at Bitcoin, the fact that it's came down 50% doesn't tell the whole story. There's been a lot of issues with Bitcoin, but there's also been a lot of successes behind Bitcoin as well. So when we look at a company like Square, what is Square doing? What are they providing for customers and for shareholders alike? Square has provided an excellent opportunity for shareholders to create wealth. 5 years ago, this was an $11, $12 stock. This is now a $183 stock and is steadily climbing to one of the largest companies on earth and an $80 billion market cap. You know how I said I was a shareholder of Visa? Visa is currently a $400 billion market cap, but the speed at which Square is catching up to it is at a rapid pace. Now, just in the last year alone, this is up 181%. As if the 1000% wasn't impressive enough, the 181% in just the last 365 days is quite impressive. So, do you think Bitcoin will be taking this share price even higher up? Well, let's go ahead and see at some of the statements and look at some of the statements that these executives have to say about it. Square believes that cryptocurrency is an instrument of economic empowerment and provides a way for the world to participate in a global monetary system, which aligns with the company's purpose, the company said in a statement. Now, those of you that don't know about Square, they're a mobile payments platform. They are disrupting a lot of different technologies, acquiring a lot of smaller tech companies, and they're one of the most successful fintech companies out there. So investing in something like Bitcoin goes hand in hand with their business model. They're focused on mobile payments, and cryptocurrencies could even be integrated hand in hand with what they already have to offer. And who knows, maybe even Square could be interested in creating its own cryptocurrency in the future. But regardless, with the 4,700 Bitcoins that they just purchased, there has to be some kind of conviction for them to buy this many Bitcoins that they believe in it for the future. We believe that Bitcoin has the potential to be a more ubiquitous currency in the future, said Square CFO. For a company that is building products based on a more inclusive future, this investment is a step on that journey. Okay, now let's go ahead and go back here. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up Bitcoin is it reminds me of something that's getting a lot of hype behind an investment recently. Let's talk about gold. And in my opinion, I think gold relates a lot to Bitcoin in the sense of the fundamentals behind it. You should be looking at Bitcoin a lot like owning gold. And one of the reasons I want to point out this is that I want to show an interview that was given to Warren Buffett recently. And I want to give his opinion on Bitcoin. I'll go ahead and play it right now.
After that meeting, his PR people put out some notes saying that, you kind of listened to cryptocurrency and maybe you're a little more in tune with the idea of Bitcoin now.
Well, I would say this. When Justin and 4 friends came, they behaved perfectly, and we had a good 3.5-hour dinner, and the whole thing was a very friendly exchange of ideas. But cryptocurrencies basically have no value, and they don't produce anything. So you can look at your little ledger item for the next 20 years, and it says you've got X of this cryptocurrency or that. It doesn't reproduce. It doesn't deliver. It can't mail you a check. It can't do anything. And what you hope is that somebody else comes along and pays you more money for it later on. But then that person's got the problem. But in terms of value,
now let's go ahead and look at this investing mogul, this genius, this one of the greatest investors, probably the greatest investor to ever live, Warren Buffett. Now, the advice that you want to take here is very important from Warren Buffett. Now, let's go ahead and compare this to another analyst from CNBC and get his opinion on the Square deal with Bitcoin.
I'm very optimistic that these new cryptocurrencies that are all built on different blockchains are going to be an important phenomenon, in the coming years. They're decentralized, which means there isn't a single point of control, a bank that can control it. Certainly Bitcoin is the granddaddy right now and is the one that has the most momentum from the people who are mining it and the people who are developing it. And I think it's going to be around for a very long time as a pretty stable asset, but I'm more excited by a lot of the innovations to come.
Okay, And here we have a completely different side to things, right? We have Warren Buffett, the genius investor, one of the richest men on earth, right? He has made billions of dollars, pretty much coming up from nothing through his acquisition of Berkshire Hathaway and then growing that company to an incredible size, one of the largest companies on earth, right? But then you have new age investors, these new analysts, and these new age investors looking into disruptive technologies like a Bitcoin, right? And when we look at the opposing sides, there is a completely different sentiment around Bitcoin on both the bullish side and the bear side. And in my opinion, I think I'm going to go with the side of Warren Buffett. It is not a productive asset. There are two different main investments when people look into productive assets. The first one is stocks. When you're investing into stocks, you are getting equity into companies. You're getting ownership of these companies. They grow revenues. They increase profits. They pay dividends. Share prices increase. They repurchase shares. There are ways that they create wealth, and they do that through the form of their businesses. And Square stock is no exception to that. They also produce wealth to shareholders by increasing revenues and increasing profits. But when you're owning gold, GLD is a perfect example of this. GLD is a gold trust. If you're owning gold, this is producing nothing. You're buying 1 bar of gold, and if you hold that for 100 years, you will now still have 1 bar of gold. It's like the example that Warren Buffett gives. If you buy a farm, this produces crops, it has a yield, and you can sell those crops, and you still have the land at the end of the day, just like the field of farmland that you originally bought. Now, the same thing when we talk about that with stocks. You still have the stocks that you buy, but they pay you dividends. They rise in share price, just like owning a Coca-Cola share. They pay dividends every quarter and they rise in share price. Now, when we talk about a Bitcoin, this is not a stable currency. When you hear this guy say that this is more and more of a stable currency, you hear the other gentleman in CNBC literally laugh. He kind of says, stable? Then that's because this is anything but a stable currency. Now, whether or not you believe in Bitcoin for the future, you have to realize something. As I'm speaking right now, do you see this price rapidly changing? This is literally changing by a rapid amount, literally by the millisecond. Bitcoin price never stops moving. It's open 24/7 because no one can determine its true value. When you look at other companies like a Square stock, people have things to base it on. People have things to look at their revenues, look at their profits, and give an idea and base off of a multiple, in this case a 253 PE ratio. People can base a multiple off that company and decide what they want to pay for it. When you're investing into Bitcoin, this stable currency, you're basing this strictly off of the belief that hopefully governments and citizens are going to utilize this currency even more in the future one day, and mining is going to be harder and harder to acquire in the future. Now, overall, what do I think about this with Square and the future of the company with its investment in Bitcoin? Now, even though I had such a contrary view to Bitcoin, and I don't like it at all, I do like this investment for one reason. And believe it or not, as you probably don't expect, I think that this is an excellent move for Square for one reason and one reason only. It's almost like buying a lottery ticket. More than likely, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, when we look at Bitcoin, it is probably going to be doing one of the two things. It is either going to be down 80, 90, maybe even 100% from where it is right now, or it is going to be up dramatically from these levels. 10,000 in the future, 20, 30 years from now, is probably going to look like a joke. It's going to be one of those two. Bitcoin is either going to be shut down by governments and citizens are just pretty much going to throw it out the window, and basically it's going to be a worthless cryptocurrency, or governments are going to start implementing this into payment systems. Basic grocery stores and tech companies are going to start using this cryptocurrency like crazy, and this is not going to go to 10,000. This is not going to go to 20,000. People are projecting that Bitcoin is one day in the future going to be millions of dollars of Bitcoin. Now, the reason why I like this is, let's take the latter example. Let's pretend that Bitcoin goes to millions of dollars per Bitcoin. In that case, Square just bought a lottery ticket. When you have a company that produces as much free cash flow as Square, investing $50 million is really not a big deal. But in the case that Bitcoin goes up 10,000 in price from the time it is now, Square will have loads of profit. This is not the type of investment Square is looking to make where they buy 4,000 Bitcoins, and if it doubles in price next year, they're looking to do a quick trade. This is not a trade, this is an investment. They're looking to hold these Bitcoins for decades into the future. And so how does this relate to a company that I own, the direct competitor Visa? I would not mind, believe it or not, seeing Visa buy 50, 100, $150 million worth of Bitcoin just for the simple fact that it's buying a lottery ticket. If this works out, a company like Visa could benefit very massively and use just some of their free cash flow to buy a couple $1 million worth of Bitcoin. And if it works out, they will have multi-billion dollars worth of profit and hopefully integrate that even more and more into their system. And I could definitely see cryptocurrency somehow being integrated more closely with Visa in the future. But regardless, I think Square is an excellent company. It's not one that I currently own. It doesn't fit currently into my strategy, into the dividend growth strategy, but I think they're an excellent fintech company. I hope to see them more successful in the future, and I think that this Bitcoin purchase is the right move in the right direction. Now let's go ahead and look into another company. We're going to look into GameStop. GameStop is a company that has had over 90% of its shareholder value lost, gone forever, over the course of the last 5 years. Not to mention people who are dividend investors, people who are looking for yield, looking for dividend growth in this company. It had some slight growth. It was really starting to get pressured. And then here in 2019, in the past year or so, it has been cut all the way down to zero. So not only has the share price gone down a tremendous amount, if you're a dividend investor, your yield, your income, has now been cut to zero. So what has been the downfall of this? Now let's go ahead and look at this interview that the CEO had. Now, like I said, I thought this was so crazy. So what a coincidence. We were talking about GameStop and how it's went down 90% in the last 5 years. Now, 5 years ago was 2015. When did this interview come out? 2015. Now, I want to go ahead and play just little clips of this video, 2 different segments of this video, and I wanted to show 2 different things. The first one is he's talking about the collectibles business. Now, if this is 2015, think about this for a moment. Amazon is coming up. Facebook is growing, Apple is growing, Microsoft, all these different tech giants are taking advantage of online platforms, and gaming is no exception. Gaming has been exploding into the online category in the past 5 years. So you're CEO, right? You're CEO of GameStop. What you should be focusing on in 2015 and even into 2020 is focusing on the online platform. How do we integrate the online platform into our business, and how do we divest from the traditional brick and mortar stores and go into online platforms? So let's go ahead and look at this. This is their CEO talking about their collectibles business and how much opportunity it has. This is back in 2015.
But listen, it's an exciting category, and it's not just Star Wars. There are a multitude of SKUs, licensed collectible products in this store. This is a Think Geek store. You know, we made that acquisition in the spring of Think Geek. We think the collectibles business will be $200 to $250 million this year. Before Think Geek, we think it'll be $500 million by 2018. So it's exciting, and you can see behind me, there's a lot of customers in our store at the Florida Mall here in Orlando.
Okay, you hear him talk about his collectibles business here, and you hear how excited. He's trying to excite investors. He's trying to get people excited about his company. Now, I want to go ahead and listen to the question that Jim Cramer asked right here. He talks about the future of the company and how they're integrating into this new online platform. So let's go ahead and listen to the question that Jim Cramer asked.
All right, now, Paul, can you tell me what this company's going to look like a few years from now? Because you've made a series of acquisitions. I think people still regard it as that store in the mall where you go in and you buy the Xbox, which, by the way, as you showed, is a really good business. But you've done a lot with telephones. You've done Apple. I need you to give people the full mosaic.
Now, the question he asked, I'm going to fast forward a little bit because he goes on for a while. The CEO rambles on for a little bit, and he kind of just avoids the question. He kind of dodges the question. He doesn't really answer it, but if we go ahead and fast forward, he starts talking about what he can offer to shareholders, what type of opportunities he can offer shareholders for the future.
We are a diversified company in that we bring to the consumer a lot of common things. We bring excellent store execution, which is great service, great inventory management, great real estate. We bring a loyalty program. 40 million members of Power Up Rewards around the world. That's a great, compelling program that overlaps across the board. We have a buy-sell trade business. We give you $1 billion of trade currency every year.
Okay, he keeps going forward there, and he keeps on going on, but you hear some of the things that he names off. Inventory management, a buy-sell trade business, great real estate. Now, this is not the type of thing that you should be listening to as an investor. You should not be focusing on how great that business is. I'm sure that their console business is great. I'm sure that the collectibles business is awesome. That's great, whatever. But what you should be focusing on is how are we going to adapt before these tech giants eat us alive? And you saw this worked out. The CEO, the management team, was not focused on integrating towards the future. They were focused on the collectibles business. They were focused on selling their good old brick and mortar games like they have for decades. And look how that's turned out for them. Shareholders have not been provided with happy returns whatsoever. But we looked at the CEO and the management team behind GameStop and how they did not integrate their business very well with technology, with the new advances in technology whatsoever, and how they basically got ate alive over the past 5 years. But if you look at this share price, you're probably thinking, wow, someone needs to throw them a life raft. Well, we have 2 pieces of good news, and the second piece of good news is really where this gets interesting. One of the only good things that they had in August of 2020, August 31st, they had a 9% investment in Chewy co-founder Ryan Cohen. GameStop shares skyrocketed Monday after RC Ventures, an investment firm managed by Ryan Cohen, co-founder of online pet supply retailer Chewy, purchased 9% stake. In a filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, RC Ventures disclosed that it has 5.8 million shares of GameStop. That puts it only behind BlackRock and Fidelity, according to Bloomberg. GameStop traded at $6.59, up 22%. Now, when this news came out, GameStop rose 22%. And this basically only acquired 9% of the company through the form of an investment. Now that's great news, but that doesn't really change the business model. And honestly, when I heard this from Chewy, I really thought to myself, wow, they're probably going to lose a lot of money on this deal. But regardless, let's go ahead and see. Now, with all the issues of GameStop, they had an awesome partnership just announced recently with Microsoft. If we go to this article here, Microsoft just announced that they are having a multi-year partnership, not some short-term deal. They're wanting to integrate their gaming platform with GameStop. GME stock surges after Microsoft partnership announcement. Shares of GameStop gained 44% in Thursday trading after the company announced that it entered into a multi-year partnership with Microsoft Corporation. Through the partnership, GameStop will use Microsoft Dynamics 365 portfolio of cloud applications to help run its back-end and in-store operations. GameStop plans to use Dynamics and gains insights into customer preferences. GameStop employees will also use Microsoft Surface tablets, while working with customers, and GameStop will use Microsoft Teams for workplace communications. The company said in a release that it's adding Xbox All Access to its offering, which provides an Xbox console and 24 months of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate to players with no upfront costs. The company expects that both it and Microsoft will benefit from, quote, the customer acquisition and lifetime revenue value of each gamer brought into the Xbox ecosystem. Okay, now while we look at that article and we look at GameStop, one of the main reasons behind GameStop is that they haven't been able to sell nearly as many games. Now let's go ahead and talk about the positive behind GameStop for a second before this deal. One of the only things that GameStop has done right is that they sell a lot of consoles. You hear their CEO talk about their buy-sell trade business. They are very good at selling consoles. Traditionally, people like to go into a store, including myself. I like to play video games. I currently own a PS4. And when I inevitably buy the PS5, I'm going to go into a physical store and buy it. I don't want to trust shipping to mail me a PS4 because there's a lot of risk with that, and I think a lot of people feel the same. Just basic customers don't trust a lot of shipping and handling for a very expensive piece of equipment like an Xbox or a PS5. But when we look at GameStop, they have had such hard downturns because there's been no new consoles. The PS4 and the Xbox One came out years ago, and so while they were selling tons of consoles back then, they're now older consoles, and people are not buying nearly as much as they were years ago. But now, since we have the new consoles coming out, there might be an opportunity here. They're going to be selling millions of new consoles to all different types of customers and all different age groups as the new technology gets more and more integrated for the future. But let's look at this. They have a deal with Microsoft. Now, before we go into the deal with Microsoft and how it will change their business, what did Microsoft announce about 2 weeks ago before this? Microsoft to buy Doom Owner in $7.5 billion video game deal. Now, I'm probably going to say this wrong. I always say the name very wrong with it. I think it's Bethesda. Is that how you say the name? But basically, this owns some very popular franchises. It owns Doom, it owns Skyrim, as well as some others. But these are the type of franchises that are the most popular in the gaming space. Microsoft has a very, very small library of exclusive games, and PS4, PlayStation, has a much higher library count than that of Microsoft. So now that Microsoft has bought this video game deal, now that they bought this video game producer, they have an exclusive library that now only Microsoft can offer to on Xbox. So now that is going to be offered directly to GameStop. GameStop can benefit from this directly. We saw in this article, employees are going to have Microsoft tablets. They're going to be communicating through Microsoft Teams. There's going to be deals offered both in-store and online that is directly through GameStop being offered for these Xbox Game Passes and then the Xbox consoles. And this is all going to be done through Microsoft Dynamics 365 portfolio of cloud applications. If we go ahead and hit the research tab here, we click stocks, and we sort by the largest market cap companies. Do you notice a trend here? All these big companies right here are all tech stocks. Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Alibaba, Facebook. These are all tech giants. And one of the reasons why I've also been bullish on Apple is the same reason why I'm bullish on Amazon. The same reason why I'm bullish on Microsoft is that these companies have an insurmountable amount of data. So when we look at Microsoft and the amount of data that they have behind Microsoft Azure, if they can give GameStop just a piece of that, a piece of the amount of data that they have for their consumers, and give that to GameStop shareholders, I think that this provides an excellent opportunity. But when we look at this, there's one thing that really frightens me here. If you're wanting to get excited about GameStop, you're thinking, okay, they have a completely new shifted business model. They have a huge investment stake for Chewy. They have some of their resources there. They have some big investors behind them. They now have a great partnership with Microsoft, the second largest company on earth. Now, if you look at that, you might be thinking, okay, this is great news. But there's one thing that is very, very frightening here if you're wanting to be a shareholder of GameStop. And that is that the competition already has a very large footholding on this. And there are basically two main competitors I want to talk about here. Let's go ahead and go here to Amazon, and they recently announced this as well. This is Luna, introducing Luna, Amazon's cloud gaming service where it's easy to play great games on devices that you already own. No waiting for lengthy downloads or updates, just play. Request your invitation for early access and help us make Amazon Luna even better. Now before we talk about Amazon, there's something that's already up which has the dominant foothold in gaming, and there's two main things. You look at the App Store, but it's mainly focused, the App Store for Apple is mainly focused on things like mobile platforms, but when you look at things like PC games, which is something that GameStop sells, Steam has a very large footholding into the online platform. When you look at PC gamers, they don't talk about where can I buy this game and where can I buy it cheapest. Instead, they're asking questions like what games does Steam have to offer and how cheaply can I buy it. Steam has such a large footholding, specifically into PC gaming, that I don't really think GameStop can compete. One of the ways that you look at this is kind of like comparing Apple with their iPhones. When you look at people that are wanting to buy iPhones, they don't say, okay, should I buy an Apple or should I buy an Android? They say, what type of iPhone should I be buying? The same thing for these Steam customers. They're not looking at other platforms. They're just buying things through Steam. Now, some people that are a little bit newer to the space, or some people that are just really big fans of Amazon or wanting to integrate this through Luna, they have the opportunity to now do this through Amazon, one of the most financially resourced, one of the most dominant, disruptive companies out there. Luna is now going to be a direct competitor to GameStop. Now, when we talk about Amazon, anytime they come into a category, anytime they come into a new space, existing companies that are already in that space usually get wiped out. When Amazon announces that it's going to be coming into your business space, it should send a chill up your spine. Amazon disrupts industries, right? They've bankrupted companies that have not been able to very, very quickly integrate their company and change their entire platform to just to compete. Not to get wiped out, but just to try to compete with Amazon. You hear companies like diapers.com being completely devastated and wiped out and gone to zero practically overnight when Amazon just undercuts them. Now, Luna is a prime example of this, of how they're going to be able to undercut GameStop. Amazon can lose money pretty much forever. They can make things so cheap that they will get a decent footholding into this platform and then later raise prices to reap the profits. But when you look at this with GameStop, I think that GameStop definitely has an opportunity here, but I think as a shareholder you should be wary. Be cautious. This is my warning out to shareholders. If you're wanting to buy into this company, I think that this definitely could be a great turnaround play with the Microsoft deal, with the investment from Chewy, and I think that they have a long way to go. But remember, bad management teams continue to make bad management decisions, as we've seen from AT&T. But overall, guys, if you want to invest in GameStop, I think you should be wary. And the same thing if you're investing with Square. I don't think that Bitcoin is going to completely revolutionize this company, but I definitely think, like both of these companies, it gives them some great opportunities. And I think that both of these are good opportunities for the company. But thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. Now, this video has been a little bit different. If you've seen some of my past videos, this is a little bit different than how I traditionally do things. I kind of want to switch things up and just try something a little bit new. But like I said, if you want to support me on the channel, if you made it all the way to the end, if you want to watch me track my annual dividend income, my monthly dividend income, my portfolio value, my monthly YouTube income, all that stuff. If you want to watch me track all that stuff and watch everything broke down, fully transparent, every single holding that I have, the amount that these companies pay me, follow along with me. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below any questions you have for me about these companies or about my portfolio in general. But thank you guys so much for watching. Go ahead and check out the description for not only this referral link, but for mentoring calls, information about credit cards, referral link for savings accounts, Yada savings accounts, all different types of stuff. Go ahead and check out all that stuff. You get the point. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.